We decided this is a group to show education as the main theme of the video. Since we wanted to highlight the discrimination established by Martin Luther King in minute 10 of the speech I Have a Dream, where he talks about the loss of the right to education of the blacks in the United States in the 1915 and 1960, which is reflected in the whites only. At this as Martin Luther King ruled disallowed to the dignity of American blacks. The division of education between black and white occurred in the 13th and 14th at the time when it was considered the blacks had to study in poor quality schools and the point of exclusion, with white judged the best universities with many comforts, with the constant revolt for a decent education, for the rights of education in African Americans. In March 1954, it was achieved that the Supreme Court declared racial segregation illegal in schools of the United States, when it understood that with education being an essential right, segregation had a massive inequality. However, in 1957, Elizabeth Eckford and 8 other African American students had to be escorted by the army in order to attend high school class at a high school in Lake Rock in Arkansas. A school for blacks also received much less funding than a school for whites, hence the Supreme Court ruling, which cited discrimination in segregation. This case is the one that Martin Luther King referred to as multiple occasions because it demonstrates the constant discrimination on the part of the student and high-ranking government officials, who referred in a hurtful and humiliating way so that whites were the only ones with an adequate and dignified education.
When the policies of segregation were declared illegal in 1954, some governments declared themselves in disagreement in the majority from the south state of the country, while in the rest of the country there were already mixed schools. The first year of the color to attend one school for whites was Ruby Bridget Hall in 1960. His parents agreed to participate in a racial integration system in the state of New Orleans. In an interview he gave for the BBC, she mentioned that the first day she entered the school, William Franz Elementary arrived at her school guarded by police officers. There were many people at the entrance. She believed it was because a festival was taking place, but years later she understood that those people were there with placards protesting, so that she didn't go to that school, and many parents that they took their children out of school, leaving here desolate. As the white teacher refused to teach her except for the teacher Barbara Henry, Ruby was always isolated from the other children, and it's inside the school she was guarded by police officers to avoid altercation with other children or with their parents. In addition to the case of discrimination that Ruby suffered when she was in a coeducational school, another case of discrimination is that of James Meredith, the first man of color to receive a college degree at the University of Mississippi. He applied twice to enter this university that was only for whites and was not accepted. James took his case to court, and after a long time, in 1962, it was accepted. Just like Ruby's case, the first day entered the university was received by protest. This time there was a great altercation. There two people died. President John F. Kennedy had to send troops to the University of Mississippi to restore social order. James' stay at the university was marked by a lot of discrimination and abuse by his classmates despite was able to graduate in political sense.
What was the outlook for education back then? The Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln in 18 1863 was the starting point of a process that he lasted more than a century. It took until May 17, 1954 for the House Supreme Court to declare racial segregation in schools unconstitutional, and it took almost 10 more years for the Civil Rights Act to become a reality. King led the social movement that demanded the real equality of all citizens and establishes in the Constitution. And if today racism is still a social scourge, it has nothing to do with the inequalities and injustice that inspired the struggle. Immortalized in his letter from Birmingham jail or in the historic speech I Have a Dream, a century after emancipation. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, made up of African American priests and are the Students Not Violence Coordinating Communicate, led the fight for equality peacefully. 1957, King travels to India where he approaches Gandhi's philosophy of not-violence, and the National Guard blocks 9 black students from entering the Little Rock, Arkansas High School. 1963, King is arrested during a peaceful protest and writes his letter from Birmingham jail. Birmingham agreement and against segregation in schools, restaurants, in shops. Great March on Washington before more than 250,000 people, he delivers his I Have a Dream speech. Black and whites tend to complete high schools almost equality, and 38% of young blacks are in college. 50 years ago, it was barely 5%. Even so, there is a 13% lower chance of an African American getting a college degree.
Currently, the education in the United States is controlled and funded mainly by the public sector. Its three main funders, which are the federal state, the local government, in the currently United States schools. They are having serious problems in terms of discrimination. One of the most evident cases are the LGBT community. Thanks to that, the federal government has exercised power to prohibit the states from discriminating the public education. The US education system is decentralized, since school management and funding is a matter dependent on each of the 50 states and the different local communities. Unlike the education system in Spain, schools do not depend on a body as a general, as an autonomous education counselor, but the schools are run, regulated, and funded by the school district which they are belong. School districts may include a large number of schools, but, but there may also be a school district, especially in the more rural areas which control only one of two schools.